It's Do Time with Pastor Steph.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. Rise and shine. You're on with this Do Time with Pastor Steph. How are you this morning? That's what I like to hear. That's what I like to hear. For this is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. So, where were you yesterday? Yesterday we started off shaking the Monday morning blues with the Do Time crew, and we talked about those relationship dilemmas. And we tried to figure out, like, what's the real dilemma? Yeah, people have like struggles with things that we just kind of can see past. Thank God, and thank God. We started off talking about one woman who had been married with a family. Her husband was a stay-at-home dad. And she got an invitation from another mom after school for coffee. And she said, sure. She really didn't know the woman, and she was familiar with her, but I don't mind having a little coffee with you. Well, her husband proceeds to tell her that he gave this same woman some chocolates and some cookies from a store where he had driven about 30 minutes away from the house to get. Well, he only told, she thinks, because he figured, well, she invited me out to, for coffee, so she's going to tell me. Well, a couple of other mothers told her that he was a little flirty. Yeah. Well, not only that, but then she got a report from the child's teacher that one day when husband dropped off the child, she commended him on his cologne. And I like that cologne. You smell nice. And the next day, he brought the bottle to the school, sprayed it on her wrist, and rubbed her wrist together. And she's trying to figure out, is she overreacting? Well, no. The Do Time crew says, absolutely not. You're not overreacting. This is the way you're supposed to respond. There's some alarms and some signals and some ringing going on that you really need to pay attention to. And how many times do we eliminate the fact that we hear those alarms and those gongs going off and we're thinking, oh, I'm just overreacting? No, you need to be paying attention to something, because something is going on. Maybe he needs a little more attention, or maybe he is actually doing some things he ain't supposed to do in his head, and now they're starting to manifest itself on the outside. I don't know, but you need to pay attention and you need to address that. Now, here's the problem. She says she has addressed it, and when he hears about it, he just shuts it down. Well, then you need to take care of this a little deeper. So if you got something like that going on, then you need to take care of that a little deeper as well. Okay? Well, the story that sent this Do Time crew into a real deep conversation was the woman who actually wrote in about a man she went out on the first date with. She said everything was going well at first. They were having a good time. And she said that when the check came, he slid the check across the table. It was a $100 bill. And he asked, would you mind paying the bill? She said she really didn't mind paying part of the bill, but she wasn't thinking that she would be asked to pay the entire bill. But, hey, okay, I got it. No big deal. And as soon as she paid the check, then he screams, congratulations, you've passed the test. She's like, what test? And he said that, in the past, his exes had burned him and had been after his money, and he had been, required to pay for food and trips and all kinds of things. And he wanted to know, was she that kind of woman? Well, she was extremely offended because she wasn't that kind of woman. And, hey, you don't have to put me through those type of tests. I have my own property, she said. I have my own job. I have my own bank account. I got my own car. I don't need your money. I thought this was going well for a first date. Well, she said she did not see him anymore, and he proceeded to stalking her, begging her to understand. And then afterwards, when she refused, he then turned the tables and told her that she was spiting him and punishing him for protecting and watching over himself, and she was overreacting. And oh yeah, see, so then he really pushed the issue that she shouldn't have been bothered with him. But here is the question. Some people felt that the reason why he did that is because he really had no money, that he was broke, and all you had to do was say so. Well, the question came up, would you date someone who was broke? And all I got to say to you is go back and listen to yesterday's conversation, because baby, it was a good one. Yes, yes, yes. Pastor KL weighed in, Lady Tamika weighed in. We had the chat room going, and yeah. See what the Due Time crew and as well as the viewers feel about dating someone who's broke. All right. Well, whoo, that's how we spent our Monday. So, it is time for Let's Talk About It Tuesday, Church Folk Day. Good morning to you, and welcome to today's show. Well, we got to give a shout out to our girl Shantice. She's not feeling well, which is why we did not get a switch tip yesterday, and we're praying that she's feeling better and she can be back with us, God spares, tomorrow. Okay, so before we get this party started, make sure you go get that healthy breakfast. Make sure you go tell somebody, anybody, that it's Due Time with Pastor Steph is on. And whatever you do, don't go anywhere, because we will be.
This is Hazel Scott. They virtually tried to erase her from history, but her contributions are undeniable. Here we go. Born June 11th, 1920. Of course, she's a Gemini. I mean, she's playing two pianos. She was deemed a musical prodigy, already playing the piano and singing at age 3, and was offered several scholarships at Juilliard and a private instructor who already deemed her a genius at age 8. What were you doing? I was trying not to pee in the bed. Anyway, by age 16, she was performing all over and crafted her own sound by taking classical pieces from Bach and Mozart, speeding them up and adding syncopation with a left hand that was faster than a flash. By the way, not only did she refuse to perform in segregated clubs, the only roles available for black women at the time were criminals, prostitutes, and maids. Hazel Scott had in her contract where she would play none of those roles. She'd only play one, herself. She had final say in both her costume and music. But get this, on the set of this film, the women were put in soiled aprons to send their men off to war, and Hazel was like, no, that ain't realistic. The producers was like, mind your business, ain't got nothing to do with you. She was like, yes it do, I'm going on strike. 3 days later, the producers finally agreed and put the women in beautiful floral dresses. But they blacklisted Hazel. So she was like, cool, I'm gonna marry Adam Clayton Powell. Yes, that one, Mr. 7th Avenue himself. And she became the first black person in history to have their own TV show. Not first black woman, first black person in history. So they tried to blacklist her again by putting her in the Red Channel saying she was a communist. She was like, I'm not a commie, y'all, but I'm sick of y'all. I'm out of here. Peace. And she went to Paris. A decade later, she moved back to the U.S. and continued to perform and record until her death in 1981. She's one of the most important figures of our time. Thank you, Hazel Scott. We won't let them erase you.
Good morning, and good morning again. Welcome back to It's Due Time with Pastor Steph, and it's Let's Talk About It Tuesday, Church Folk Day. And I hope my crew comes up with some church folk stuff, because I don't really have anything today. And it's been racking my brains all day, all night. And I'm trying to figure out what we're going to talk about, but we just may get there without me even realizing it. So if you've got something that we call a church folk question, we haven't done that in a while. So if you've got a church folk question, why do church folk, put it up in that chat room and let's talk about it. Okay, well, you know how we do each and every morning. I got to say good morning to my loyal viewers, and I want to say good morning to you. And the only way I'm going to know you're in the room is if you shout it out and say, good morning, Pastor Steph. So we got a check-in from our boy Terrence. Hey, Terrence, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. We got a check-in from Ketty. Good morning, Ketty. How are you? Thank you so much for joining us. We got to check in from our girl, Tamika. Good morning. Good morning, my girl. Are you still thinking about, should we date a man that's broke? Whew, what a conversation. And we got a check-in from our boy, Serge. Hey, Serge, thank you so much for joining us. And we must say good morning to the ladies that help us hold it down each and every morning and bring us our Facebook Live and our YouTube Live. Let's say good morning to Shantice. Good morning. And say good morning to our girl, Anika. Good morning. Good morning. Hope you're still feeling well. Okay. Well, I came across a list of fast food restaurants that were ranked from worst to best. Now, I did sneak, which is a rare occasion. I did sneak and look at the first ones that they said were the absolute worst. And there are so many of them here. Some of them we have in the New York neck of the woods. Some of them we don't see until we start traveling. So some of you may know these by not living here in New York, and some of you may not know these. But I'm sure we're going to come across some of these that all of us have heard of, and probably many of us have eaten at. Now, Tamika says, feel better, ladies. Nice. Thank you. So listen, here's my thought. We've done this before, and this is a newer list. So let's see if anything has shifted. So if you think you know the best, and if you think you know the worst, I want you to put in the chat room. Let's see how savvy you are on the fast food. All right, so let's see what we got here. Well, the first one is Carl's Jr. That's the worst. Yeah. They say they broke into the fast food business with their big size burgers, but the reduction in size and the overall quality, they have definitely fallen off. They are no more thick burger. Those days are gone. Next is Panda Express. Yeah. Panda Express. We all know that's the Chinese fast food joint. And they say that after a while, the novelty does wear off. They have gone down. They say it leaves a lot to be desired, and you might want to hit your real Chinese food spot. Little Caesars. Remember now, right now we're at the worst. We're not at the best. We are at a long line in the back of the line. Little Caesars is at the back of the line. They say hot and ready is just that, hot and ready. It does not mean good, and they do not compare anywhere near their competitors. Well, they only charge you $7 for a pie. I mean, how great do you think it's going to be? Well, Shantice may start weeping and a wailing. Chick-fil-A is at the back of the line. Yes, it says that their chicken sandwich has really pushed them into the notoriety and recognition, but the rest of the menu ain't about nothing. You can find this stuff anywhere, and you can make your own sauce. Wow. Okay. Starbucks. Expensive Starbucks is on the back of the line. Oh, shucks now. Yes, with their world famous coffee, they are at the back of the line. Yeah. It says that they are lagging far behind, and their drinks are really showing a decline. Their assortment of pastries are an afterthought. And their lattes and stuff, nah, can't do it anymore. No. Subway. Wow. Subway is at the back of the line. Well, of course, the sandwich shop is, a quickie joint, as they call it. And they say, remember Blimpies? Who remembers Blimpies? Man, Blimpies was the joint. It was a sloppy sandwich, but it would be slipping and sliding with all the vinegar and oil, salt and pepper, and it was just good. Subway's is a neater sandwich, but they say it does not hold a definite mirror to some other sandwich joints, and they have fallen off in recent years. How can you fall off from making a sandwich? That's all they do, is you go down the assembly line and you tell them what you want in your sandwich. How can you fall off? I don't know. Maybe with all the tomatoes and cucumbers on recall, you can't get a decent sandwich. Maybe that's what's going on. Panera Bread is at the back of the line. Wow. Once famous for those great atmospheres and soups, baked goods, and sandwiches, the quality has definitely fallen off. People are not enjoying Panera Bread the way they used to. And Panera Bread is kind of expensive, right? So you ain't got no business falling off. Jack in the Box. Well, at the back of the line, I'm not surprised. Jack in the Box is in the 30s as well, and I'm not surprised at all. Say no more. What else do we have on this list? I never even heard of that one. Taco Bell. Why isn't Taco Bell the one at the top of the worst list? Can I tell you something? Nothing has ever drawn me to Taco Bell. It just, every time I would step in there, I make my own tacos. This Taco Bell is just, no Taco Bell. No quiero Taco Bell. Sorry. Go away. Let me see what else. Krispy Kreme. Wow. They're a fast food donut shop. And they say that despite swimming past Dunkin' Donuts for a while and everyone claiming that they were the best and the long lines outside, that has definitely lightened up over the years. And they now have some competition in the donut industry. And I want to know who's their competition. It must be somewhere in the South because Dunkin' Donuts, every time you go up in there, they donuts are hard. Unless time to make the donuts at 6 o'clock in the morning. Other than that, I have not had a soft donut from Dunkin' Donuts, but I can't eat donuts anyway. But the last time I had a Dunkin' Donut, and every time before that, it was always hard. Krispy Kreme donuts are always nice and soft. So I don't know who their competitor is, but they're in the 30s. Yeah. Domino's. Yeah. Well, Domino's, they come through with their best prices. But I gotta tell you, you order it looks cheap until you just start ordering. And then before you know it, you're at like $50. I'm just like, how did we get here? I don't know, y'all. Help me. Are you putting in this chat room who you think is going to be the worst and who you think is going to be the best? Make sure that if you give the name of the restaurant, you say whether it should be the worst or the best, because I'm not going to know. Okay? Well, Domino's is sitting in the high 20s, and it's not getting a very good rating. Burger King, that's not surprising. I read something about Burger King, and they were saying a lot of them are dirty. They're not clean the way they used to be, but they're in the high 20s as well. So I'm not surprised to hear that. Their flame grilled beef burger or grilled chicken is not hitting the way it used to. I got to tell you, it's for me, Burger King outranks McDonald's any day. Yes, I love me a Burger King burger. I don't eat it very often, but I do prefer that over McDonald's. Let's see. Yeah, I'm kind of impartial to some of these because some of these names I do not recognize. And of course, this is going into La La Land. All right, let's see. What else? Jimmy John's is on this list, and it's not too far from the top. They're kind of in the middle. Jimmy John's. And for those of you who don't know, Jimmy John's is like a Subway. But they claim to be better than Subways. Well, clearly ranking they are, because they are a lot closer to number one than Subway is. Who's Biscuitville? Okay, for those of you who know Biscuitville, they're sitting, somewhere near the top. So we're talking about the top 15 right now. KFC is in the top 15, and their herbs and spices, they say, are unparalleled. I gotta tell you, I cannot eat their original. No. What happened to the spicy chicken? They were the original spicy chicken here in New York, and it was good. After a while, they stopped serving the spicy. The crispy didn't have much of a flavor. The original was always soggy. So no, I'd rather Popeyes over KFC. And yeah, KFC is in the top 15. Let's see who else is in the top 15 that I recognize. Jersey Mike's Subs. Yeah, they're in the top 15. They are another Jimmy John's, Subways. Yeah, I've never eaten from there. And I did hear someone say that they're not all of that. So I'm kind of surprised that they're, here at this point. Let's see. White Castle is number 10. Wow. I didn't expect to see this here. I got to tell you, I'm a little surprised. Well, let's see. Everybody always calls them murder burgers. So I'm really surprised they're at number 10. I am really surprised that they're at number 10. Because anytime you mention White Castle, they always talk about how it messes up their stomach. But for Stephanie, in all my life, I've been eating White Castle since I was a kid. It has never messed up my stomach. So I don't know, but I don't know. Should White Castle be at number 10, y'all? I don't know. Yo, let me know. Let me know. Put it in the chat room. Let me see what else is going on here. Come on. Wendy's. Wow. Wendy's is number 9. Wow. Now, Wendy's always had the most smoking strawberry lemonade. They have the best strawberry lemonade out of everybody, including White Castle, by the way. Yeah, they always have. And their spicy chicken sandwich has always been good. Yeah, always been good. I can't wait to read the comments. I see the comments are coming. Five Guys is number 8. Now, I've seen Five Guys, the big burger joint. I just have not tried it, but it's at number 8. We're counting down, y'all. We're counting down. Let's see where we're going. Let's see where we're going here. What's number 7? See number 6. What's number 7? Popeyes. Wow, number 7 is Popeyes. Okay. So Popeyes beat out KFC. Popeyes beat out White Castle. Okay. Let's see what's number 6. Chipotle. Now, I like me some Chipotle. I like Chipotle. They haven't got, they keep getting bad ratings recently. Yeah, so I'm kind of surprised about Chipotle being number 6. All right, let's see what else. We're gonna wrap this up so we get to our news. Shake Shack. Wow, number 5. Shake Shack is number 5. Wow. All right. Checkers is number 4. I like Popeyes better than Checkers. No. No. I like Checkers. No. Let's see what else. What's number 3? Whataburger. I've heard of it before. I've never eaten it. In the South. Oh, goodness gracious. Culver's is number 2. Never heard of Culver's at all, but they say it's a Midwestern fast food. For those of you who know Culver's. What's number 1? In-N-Out Burger. Must be another Southern place because I don't have any idea what In-N-Out Burger is. All right, let's see what's going on in the chat room. Wait. Boy, y'all were talking up a storm here. All righty, wow. Okay. We got a check-in from our girl, Viv. Hey, Viv, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. Kenny says Blimpies was the best sandwich back then. Absolutely. Tamika says, I don't eat out much, but now I find that I've been scraping the bottom. I guess I'll stay at home. Why you didn't tell us which scraping at the bottom? You cheater. Let's see. Kenny says McDonald's are carrying Krispy Kreme donuts now. Really? Wow. Okay. Shanti says Krispy Kreme is good. I agree. Shanti says McDonald's is nasty, fake food. Tamika, how did KFC get to the top? Nope. I will pass. Chicken doesn't taste like chicken. All right now. We are doomed if White Castle is number 10. Cousin Pete must be doing this rating. Oh my goodness gracious. Vinny says White Castle is home of the belly bomb. Katie says White Castle, yes, should be 10. It's the onions that mess up your stomach. Oh, okay. Katie would know she's the onions and pepper girl. No, Shake Shack is good. Teresa says, good morning. Hey, Teresa. Thank you so much for joining us. Excited to be here this morning. Amen. And Miss Charlene. Hey, Miss Charlene. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Miss Charlene says Lumpies were the best sandwiches. Yes, they were. I remember them, and White Castle is number one to me. It still tastes good. Wow. Now, I've never heard of Lumpies. Is that before my time, Miss Charlene? I was about 66. How long has Lumpies not been around? But White Castle, I got to tell you, I can always get me a good White Castle burger. They're not a belly bomb to me, Pastor Vinny. And I still will stop by each and every time I'm with Miss Charlene. All right. Oh, my goodness. That was fun. All right. Let's get to some of this news because, baby, I got some stuff to talk to you about. All right. Where are we starting? I don't even know where to start. Some stuff here. All righty. Okay, well, this Jonathan Joss, this thing was all over the news. When I tell you, if they didn't talk about this thing 950 times in one night, it's a very sad story. Excuse me. Actor Jonathan Joss, for those of you who watch, he's a voiceover character in one of these what do you call it? Excuse me. Cartoons. One of those adult cartoons. Well, he is gay, and unfortunately he was murdered, they say, from a homophobic neighbor. And his husband, Jonathan Joss's husband, who was only, Jonathan Joss was only 59, says that they've been harassed by these people for years. And the people have made it very, very clear that they don't like them. And somehow or another, they got into an argument. Jonathan Joss got into an argument with his neighbor. And they have been reporting this neighbor for a while now. They say they've been reporting the threats to law enforcement over and over again, and nothing was done. And again, they got into some argument, and the neighbor pulled out a gun and shot him and murdered him. King of the Hill is the name of the cartoon, and we've all heard of King of the Hill if we look at TV. Me, I've watched it. I've never watched it, but he is one of the main characters. John Redcorn is who he plays in King of the Hill. He did voiceover from season 2 to season 13. So if you are a King of the Hill fan, you definitely know who this individual is. Prayers to his family. You know, whether we feel, Christianity supports, homosexual lifestyles or whatever, he's still an individual, and you just can't go around hating people. And they said that this has been a hate crime for homosexuals for a long time. They've been enduring this. And, some people just don't want to move. Some people say, well, why didn't you move? Everybody, listen, I've been in my own home for 30 years and I've never experienced that type of treatment. But I got to say, when you buy your home, you pick your home, you like where you live, you want to be comfortable, and your neighbors may not make you that comfortable, but you may not want to pack up and leave, and he shouldn't have to. It's his life. As long as you're not infringing on anyone else's life, pushing that on someone else, then leave people alone. So again, we, send prayers up to the family. Of course, it's a loss. It hurts. If you've been complaining and reporting this and they did nothing, I'm going to tell you something. These laws and things like that, they are becoming more and more protecting of us. And a lot of times I've heard people complain and they say, oh, well, we can't do anything until. Well, maybe they can do something now. Now the man will go to jail when his threats weren't good enough. And Maybe they should have forced him to move. There would have been a life still here. So none of us have, the right to take anyone's life. And this is sad. It's very sad. But when I tell you it was all over the news in all shapes, forms, and fashions, the headlines were there. So we definitely want to pray for his family. All right. What else are we talking about today? Now, speaking of law, there is an exotic dancer who is on this side of the fence. And I'm trying to see where she was dancing. Well, her complaint is, Houston. Her complaint that she has applied for stripper jobs in several strip clubs. And she has been experiencing racial discrimination. And she's been going through this for quite a many years. Well, she took it to court, and they say that there's a 4-year statute of limitations. So if she's complaining about something that happened earlier than, let's say, 2021, then too bad for you, we can't pursue it. So she took it to Supreme Court. Yeah, she was serious about that thing. She took it to Supreme Court, and Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson is the only one who aided her and who voted that they should pick this up. Well, she and only one other, and that's Sonia Sotomayor. Surprised. And everybody else vetoed. So unfortunately, the Supreme Court won't be picking this up either. Now, this is kind of funny because they're caught between the statute of limitations and her technically not being within the statute of limitations. And that's the problem. So here's the thing. She's saying that she's been experiencing the racial discrimination since back before 2017. Well, of course, that would not meet the statute of limitations. However, they said that technically the clock should reset each time she goes and she's discriminated against. It shouldn't go back to 2017 or earlier. So in other words, if she experienced this in 2017, okay, yeah, maybe. But if I experienced this in 2022, again, then I should have the right to bring this into court because it technically is not past the statute of limitations. So that's where they got caught up within the Supreme Court. Now, Jackson and Sotomayor, they supported her because they said that the Houston court system failed her. They should have paid attention to this, but they didn't. But they could not get any support. So there will be no racial discrimination for this woman. At least no court. So, but can you imagine? This is your fight. Racially discriminated against at the strip clubs. They told her that they had too many black strippers already on the pole. Yes, that's what she said they told her. I'm not lying. I'm not paraphrasing either. Yeah, too many black girls working on the poles already. Woo, injustice. What else are we talking about? Well, how many of you knew that toilet paper was going to become extinct and you didn't tell me? Yo, they're saying we're having a problem with running out of toilet paper, and toilet paper will be irrelevant soon. Now, I'm a little lost because I thought paper comes from trees. and I guess maybe cutting down the trees. That's cutting down the toilet paper. Woo. Well, they say that toilet paper is becoming irrelevant very quickly. And in the future, we may have a problem with needing toilet paper options. Okay, so they were thinking about what could we use, because they're saying that the average person uses the bathroom 4 to 10 times a day. That's considered normal. And the average person uses 6 to 7 sheets per wipe. But that's for women. Men use 8 sheets per wipe. Now, let's just be happy that they don't go to the bathroom like that very, as well often as we do. So they're trying to figure out that if we go through toilet paper at that rate, and that's considered normal, and it's an average of 50 rolls per year that each person goes through, not a household, because I've always wondered what happened in my house. They must be eating the toilet paper. But the toilet paper, they say, is going to run out. So they say bidets is the first line of defense. And that has been around for centuries. Well, it's been around in centuries for other countries, not here in the United States. So they're saying, people may get bidets. They're not that expensive, not much more than your regular toilet. And they say that bidets provide that no need to wipe. Now, I have yet to use a bidet. I don't know if that's my recourse. I don't know if I want to do that. But the only other alternative that they could come up with, are y'all ready? Reusable toilet paper. Reusable cloth toilet paper. Now, y'all, but I don't know if I'm ready for that. Let me say this. I hope by the time, if we should ever run out of toilet paper and we have to go to reusable cloth toilet paper, I live alone. That is not something I want to be around for other people. Because where you hanging this stuff? Where you hanging it? They even say here that you're going to have to wash that out. One of the downsides of this is it's going to be stained. Why? Something that we have to be concerned with. God, are you sending Jesus back before then? That's all I'm asking. Did this here? If we don't need Jesus, if we've never needed the Lord before, we sure do need him now. Yo, this is too much for Stephanie. I gotta tell you, it's not much that's too much for Stephanie, but I gotta tell you, this here is too much for Stephanie. And I'm gonna stop the news right there, because this gives us enough to talk about. Because whoa. When I saw this last night, I was like, I'm not ready, y'all. I'm not ready. Where is my due time crew? Where's Pastor Vinny? Where's my Pastor Vinny?
Good morning. Good morning.
My sister. How are you, my brother?
I'm doing good. I am doing good. Yes. God has brought a throne. No matter what madness is happening around us, God is still God. Amen.
And thank God for that.
Yes. Amen.
Thank God we don't have to use a reusable cloth,
No.
God. Oh, Pastor Vinny.
No buts about
All
it.
right, let's talk about this news here. Man. All right. Wait a minute. I got to go back, Pastor Vinny, and read these comments. Okay. We're fighting for strippers' rights now, Shantice is asking. No toilet paper. Oh, we have to count the amount of sheets we use. What's happening? What are we going to use to dry off, though? Isn't it a washcloth? Washcloth for bathroom tissue. Just kill me. All right, Pastor Vinny. We're talking this morning about our news. And this really is not being nice to me at all.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about, let's see, the Georgia stripper, not Georgia stripper, the Houston stripper who wants to take her cause to court. She says that she's been throughout several strip clubs out in Houston, and they have told her they already have too many black women on the pole already. And they could not hire her. And she took it to the local courts out in Houston, and they said no because she had met the statute of limitation already, which is 4 years. That's it, on racial discrimination. And she took it to Supreme Court. Ketanji Brown Jackson picked up the cause. Sonia Sotomayor agreed that they should take her cause because technically the clock should reset each time she was rejected, which means that she would not have exceeded the statute of limitation. But they vetoed. They knocked them out the park. So they said absolutely not.
Yeah.
Should she take her cause to court, or should she, kind of hang at home and just deal with it?
I don't know. It's really come to a bad situation when we can't even get a pole job. We can't even, we can't even get a job on the pole. I mean, and this is what we're using the Supreme Court for.
Yeah.
This is what we're using the Supreme Court for. Equal justice on the pole. It's sad. I mean, everybody has the right to, maybe she needs to try other options. Sometimes, I was a letter carrier for 34 years. But sometimes I wish I'd gone to electrical school, When I was out there in the rain and the snow and running from the dogs, I wish I was inside messing with electricity.
Oh my goodness.
But I mean, this is her only option. I mean,
and that's what I thought. That came across my mind, Pastor Vinny. I'm like, yo, you can't go do nothing else?
Yeah. I mean, who told you that this is the only job you can do? I know.
She did.
She did. I know McDonald's make a hat big enough for her head.
Wow. All right, Pastor Vinny. We're talking about this. We're going to run out of toilet paper eventually.
Hold on, I'm sorry.
Now, first of all, can you even believe that? How are we running out of toilet paper? You can't recycle enough to get us some toilet paper?
I don't want to give up my secret. But when they started with all of the foolishness, I started buying our toilet paper by the case.
Oh,
I got
okay,
I got
okay.
2 cases in the garage, just marinating, waiting for their chance to be used. I mean,
I've always bought toilet paper I've always had all girls. So we've always had to have tons and tons and tons of toilet paper. So I'm with you. I'm for stocking up on the
yeah,
toilet paper.
yeah.
But what are we gonna do? Is a bidet something that we need to consider? Is it okay? We need to use the reusable cloth, and like Shanti said, at the end of the day, it's a washcloth.
Hmm.
But my thing is, what are you gonna do when you go to public bathrooms?
You're gonna carry your toilet paper in a Ziploc bag. But listen, this is not new. Remember the cloth diapers that we use for the
Yes.
babies?
Yep.
That's all that is. It's a diaper, and they were stinky and all of that stuff, but they did the job. They did the job. It may add another step as far as sanitation. But diapers have been reusable. Forever. The stains don't. When it gets too stained, like everything else, then it's time to go.
And you're right. Pastor Vinny. This is not our first time. However,
Yeah.
we have come too far to go backwards.
We are too. We continue to be a lazy society.
You calling me lazy because I don't want to use reusable cloths, Pastor Vinny?
What if you don't have a choice? I'm saying. Okay. I'm telling my sons now, Nathaniel, Marcus, Benjamin, one of y'all better invent something that's going to replace toilet paper. Come on now, get with it.
All right. So you're right, Pastor Vinny. If we have no other choice, we have no other choice. However, again, I'm sorry. I've been spoiled.
Not sorry.
I'm 58. I don't want to go backwards. I ain't having no more babies. My mother, she told me, back in the 60s, they had, like you said, they had to use, cloth diapers. And that was the thing to do. But my thing is, listen, we didn't come too far now. Y'all have learned how to do everything else. Mm-hmm. Don't set us backwards. I'm sorry. Please do not set me backwards. You keep coming up with the technology to get us some disposable. And that's why I said, you know what? We're fine. Just make sure, God, I live alone. All my grown kids are gone. There are no more tenants, visitors, nothing, nobody who spends the night in my house. That way, no. No, Pastor Vinny, no.
Let the baby live.
No.
Let the baby live.
No.
You know what's causing the problem? Thank you, Holy Spirit. See, okay, now Bounty and Brawny and all those big towel Bounty, now they want to be 3-ply. Why you need a 3-ply hand towel? That's where all the paper is going. Thank you, Lord. That's where all the paper's going. 3-ply. I mean, what are you gonna? You're gonna mop up a monsoon in your house? How much? Just because I got it down. I'm like, hey, how many strips are you taking of that toilet paper?
Oh, say it again, Pastor Vinny. Say it again. They talk about me like a dog, Pastor Vinny. Oh, why you talking about how much paper towel we use? You do not blow your nose on paper towel.
Oh no!
You don't blow your nose on toilet paper. You do not use toilet paper to wipe up the and you don't pull the toilet. You don't pull a paper towel like this.
No.
Thank you, Pastor Vinny.
No, even my grandbabies. How many you got, Bricky? I got just one sheep pop. That's why I love you, baby. Yeah. Now listen, we gotta live. We gotta live.
I'm so
glad. Annie Mae, eat the cake, Annie Mae. Eat the cake.
I'm so glad I'm not the only one who talks like this. When I tell you they talk about me and they rag me like a dog, Pastor Vinny, especially your girl Shantice and my youngest. Boy, they talk about how cheap I am. And I tell them, you know what? I might be cheap, but we ain't never been in the dark. We ain't never been hungry. We ain't never had our gas turned off because I have to be frugal and we are not going to be wasteful.
Yeah.
But thank you, Pastor Vinny.
Let's
see what Pastor KL has to say. Okay. Yes.
Well, when the bill comes, it don't come
Who
to them.
pays it? Thank you. Thank you. And thank you.
They be looking up in the sky like money supposed to drop down. Money ain't dropping down. I love you, Shanti.
Thank you. Thank you, Pastor Vinny.
Your house.
All right now. Thank you. Woo! Somebody other than me. All right. Let's see. Before we get Pastor KL on here, Serge says, oh, that's nasty. Who wants to reuse toilet paper? That bathroom will stink. I will never invite or have an event. Nope, that's real nasty. Shanti says, there will never be another visitor here again. I already had a bottle thrown, a battle grown man with washing their hands too much. When the bill comes, I use the paper towels to dry Pastor Steph's tears.
Oh gosh.
Yes. Or she uses it to stick in my mouth when I start yelling. In your mouth, put that in your mouth. Oh my goodness. Thank you for joining us, Pastor Vinny. Let's talk to Pastor KL. Good morning, Pastor KL.
Good morning, pastors. How are you?
Good morning, my brother.
Thank you. How are you?
Amen.
I'm well. I'm well.
Good. All right, Pastor KL. We're talking about the exotic dancer who has been racially discriminated against. They told her, we have too many Black women on the pole already working here. And she has taken her plight to local courts in Houston. They said no. She took it to Supreme Court. They said no. Where does she go from here is the question.
Back to school. I mean, did she go to stripping school university? I mean, you know, is it that important that you get a job in your field? You know, did you do 4 years of this? I'm just trying to understand, why is this so important? You know, and if every club that you done went to is turning you down, it ain't because you're Black.
Hello.
You're just not looking good on that pole. You know, the company is into making money. You know, I mean, I start to question your size. Were you smaller than the pole?
My mind.
Would the pole hold you? You know what I mean? What is my motivation? You know, even in clubs, there's a 2-drink minimum. They want to make sure they get their money. If people are throwing change at you, you know what I mean? You're not going to make your money. And then I got to worry about that you got hurt because you got hit by a quarter. No, thank you. Go sit down somewhere.
Leave it to Pastor King. Yeah, you know, like I said, we're talking earlier. You know, listen, this is not a racial thing. At the end of the day, it may appear racial, but at the end of the day, it's not racial. You know, whether it's, you know, they don't think you look good, whether they don't feel you are good, whether this is just God's way of maybe blocking you from pursuing this, maybe enough is enough. He's allowed you to go this far, and maybe now it's the end of your journey. Whatever it is, it has nothing to do with racial, especially when you are. Can you imagine? I guess people are getting money for everything these days, but can you imagine somebody getting money for, you can't get on a pole? And, people would say, well, that's ultimately not the issue. But at the end of the day, it is the issue. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? All right, Pastor KL, we got this dilemma. Pastor Vinny has thrown at me, Pastor Steph, we used to use diapers back in the day. And by the time 1985 came around, we had disposable diapers. So I dodged that bullet, Pastor Vinny. Mm-hmm. We will be forced to use a bidet or use washcloths, pretty much, to replace toilet paper. What's your thought?
Basically, I don't know that I want water squirting in my butt. I just don't know if I want that, for an option. I don't know, Pastor Steph, if you ever been fishing, but sometimes you fishing out there and you got to go to the bathroom. You know what I mean? And you find yourself a tree or a bush, and in the back of your car, back in the days we had newspaper. Now sometimes you had the whole news on your butt because of the dye that came out, but it was, it was an option. It was an option. I'm not doing the bidet. I'm sorry. I buy the toilet tissue. When we had the whole pandemic, people were buying toilet tissue like it was water. A roll of 36 can last me the whole year. A roll of 36. I mean, a pack of 36 can last me the whole year. I'm okay. Huh?
Well, it's funny because they said that the average person uses about 50 a year. So you're right. 36 could last a person like a whole year based on how much you use. You're right. Because that's what they've already done. I don't know about
stack up with toilet tissue now. You know what I mean? And get you some newspaper if they still sell them in your area. As a backup.
Well, it's funny because my mother brought that up. She said, definitely back in the day, if you got caught out there, like you said, she said we use newspaper, but back then you didn't have that dye all over your hands and stuff. The paper with the printing was different. So listen, my mother, and I will tell this story because she used to tell this story all the time. We used to ask her, why do you have so much toilet paper? You live alone. We would be able to shop in her house for toilet paper. And she said years and years ago, she said, I will never forget, we ran out of toilet paper. Nobody told me. And she said she went into the shoebox and she got the paper out the shoebox. She said, and I vowed I'd never do it again. She did, because she ain't never run out no toilet paper. So, we know that at the end of the day, there have been other, emergency options or whatever the situation is. But like I said, the Pastor, I just hope that day comes, it's grown and gone.
But I'm with Pastor Vinny too. Why we got 2 and 3 and 10 ply on the paper towel? Listen, you ever got a roll of 1 ply toilet tissue? You got to put the whole roll in the butt. You got to use the whole roll.
Thank you.
Well, that's why they got. This is why they have multiple ply paper.
Exactly. Because listen,
right? If you don't have enough, it's not going to absorb anything.
Once you put that roll, you give your own self a colonoscopy after a while. You got the shelf so far up in there. It's just ridiculous.
Okay. Oh my goodness gracious. We just.
My Lord. My.
What?
I mean, and Pastor Steph, I'm with Pastor Kale. I'm sure that you don't want to be cleaning back there, and all of a sudden your hand come out, and you got the toilet paper with someplace else, and you got a handful of what's supposed to be in the toilet in the toilet paper. You know, that's not cool.
Oh, listen. What if you go too deep and you cut yourself with a nail?
I've been trying to say, let's change the subject.
You're not calling 911, are you?
I can't stop laughing in order to say it takes you, Pastor KL, to take us into the next hemisphere all the time. And Pastor Vinny, you're not supposed to pick up where he left off. You have not learned that by now?
I know, birds of a feather.
Oh my goodness gracious. Well, Shati says, for the stripper, that could be God closing every door. I agree. We just don't know. That's what's supposed to happen. Well, that's what happened to me. You passed Jeff's voice. Anika says, good morning, all. Good morning, Anika. Good morning. Tamika says, this would be an excuse for the bacon strip. Kill the vision. You know what? I can't with y'all. I can't. My stomach is hurting so badly. I can't. Oh my goodness gracious. All right. You know, I have some things that we can talk about. I'm not interested in talking about those things. Do either one of you have we used to call it a church folk question. It's like, why do church folk whatever? You know, is there something that comes to your mind that's okay to talk about? That's okay to talk about church people, about church folk. Pastor Vinny? If not, I'll go to one of my topics.
Well, I guess one of my issues, like I said, I grew up with eight sisters and a brother, 10 of us, and my mother had us all in the pew ahead of her, and she always made sure, as many as there were of us to get dressed and get ready for church and blah blah, we were always there on time. But there are some people, if they're not late, they're not coming. and they come by themselves. They're not getting children ready. You know what is that? And you can almost set your watch by the time they coming in. We've just gotten so irreverent, I think, in the house of God. I mean, it's like now we have to make an entrance. You know, it's just the level of irreverence that, you know, continues, you know, to go on, and it's getting worse. You know, why we have to have boots on the ground in church?
Okay.
I mean,
okay.
It is just, it's outrageous. It's outrageous. I would hate to get that check when the bill comes due.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of bills are gonna come due for the church, and I would hate to have some of those bills left to my charge.
Okay. Good question. Pastor KL, what say you about this lateness?
Well, in my former life, before I became a pastor, I was the late guy. And I was late on purpose. I used to always come after testimony service, because Moms Mabley would have the same testimony every week. And you sit there and you wonder why the pastor doesn't cut off. And all the pastor, you know how the pastor says, amen, as if to say shut up. But Moms Mabley never catches it. I don't want to sit through all that. And then, everybody else lying. You can tell their testimony they lying. You can tell they lying. God ain't do it like that. So no, I used to come late on purpose.
Well, Pastor Vinny, is it possible that they could be coming late on purpose?
They could be coming late on purpose, but that doesn't make it right. You got to suffer with the rest of us.
The devil is a liar. God gives you wisdom.
Well, I gotta tell you, when we what time does church start? That's my question. What time does church start?
10 o'clock.
Okay, all right. I remember my grandmother. We used to have to be in church at 9:30, 9:45. And man, and she used to snag everybody because she used to say, "You get to work by 9." And
yeah.
Okay, that's what she used to say to people. You get to work by 9, and you could set your clock by some of you getting there on time, and blah 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 blah. Since I've had service on this side, we've always started like 10:30ish. Nothing earlier than 10:30. Recently here we've moved closer to 11, which I don't like to start at 11 because my thing is the later. See, I don't know about Sunday people, but for Sabbath worshipers, they, years ago, their theory was because you did not, they wouldn't trust their congregants to get out of church early because they would break the Sabbath. So they would keep them in there all day. And my grandmother was one who, pretty much we didn't stay in there all day. I don't want to sit up in no church all day. I'm sorry. I don't care whether you go to church Sabbath, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I don't care. I don't want to be up in there all day. I don't think I need to be up in there all day. I don't need the drill sergeant keeping me in there all day. So therefore, my theory is if we start early, we can get up out of here early because I'm not keeping you in there all day.
Right.
We may have like a little longer service based on what we're doing. Sometimes we don't do just an average service. We do something different. So it may keep us in there a little later, but that little later ain't going to be no 7, 8 o'clock. Sometimes we be driving past some of the churches and they be like, yo, go home. And my thing was, you can't, to me, if you're observing the Sabbath, then that's on you. I'm not going to stay up in there with you and babysit you in order to make sure you don't break the Sabbath. If you break the Sabbath, that's between you and God. I'm not doing all of that. So my thing is, let's start at 10:30 so that we can get up out of here. Because I'm also not one for Sabbath school, divine worship, afternoon service. We don't do all of that. We don't have a long day. Do you have a long day? Which is another reason why I'm not making excuses, but I'm trying to think. The question is, why do people come late? Is it because it's a long day? Do you have a long day?
No.
What time you get out?
We would get out probably 2 hours, 2.5 hours. So we start.
And you late?
Huh?
And you late?
And they're late. And they're late. And
so if you start at 10, you get out at 12?
Pretty much, yeah.
And you late?
And late.
No.
And late.
No.
Yeah.
No.
You
out of control.
It has to mean something and it's not 15 minutes late. It's like a half hour late. That means that when you're supposed to be at church, you're probably just getting out of the shower.
Right.
You just getting out of the shower.
Right.
Yeah, doing us a favor by showing up.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's an issue of it's not your heart is not there. Your heart is not in it. Because if your heart was in it, it's only 2 hours. So you don't really want to be there. You're just going. It's those seat fillers, I call them. You're just going, Pastor Vinny, because you're not going there to get anything.
Right.
We got some comments here. Terrence says, yes, Pastor, right. You have to make an entrance. And Tamika says, on daylight savings time, a whole family entered the church during the benediction. Wow. Wow. He ain't walking up in their job during no time out.
Right.
You're not doing that at the job. At the end of the day, from Pastor Vinny, like I said, that's why I gave the whole scenario about being in there all day, because sometimes people use that. Well, we're gonna be in here all day, so I come a little late, but I'm here for the bigger part of the service. But if the service is only 2 hours and you're coming in a half hour late, then your heart is not there. You're not going to get something. You're not going to make an entrance. You're just going to be there, and you're just dragging in. Yeah. Shanti says, I used to get to church in time to pay tithes and eat lunch. She sure did. How far did that get you? How far did that get you? You know what I'm saying? You're going to get from God what you give God. How about that? Pastor KL, you're going to get from God what you give God. You come up in there half hour late to a 2-hour service. What you expecting to get from God?
You're absolutely right. You reap what you sow. You have to sow something. And then you have to sow on good ground. You sow at your job. You sow at the club. You know what I mean? What is the club giving back to you? Nothing. And if we be honest, a lot of these folks are late to church because they just got out of the club. So they're getting themselves together. They waking up late. You know what I mean? They burning the candle on both ends, and now they want to give the God their what's left.
Right.
Yeah, to give God what's left. You know what I mean? The priority went to the club, and they had a good time, but now they want to repent and say, "I'm sorry, Lord, for shaking my booty at the club." You know what I mean? So I mean that's pretty much what it is. And then let's listen to the whole thing we've been talking about. So now you don't give God nothing. But now you want him to stand before the judge so you can get paid on the pole. Yeah. Think about the things that we do. You know what I mean? We don't go to church. We don't pray until there's a crisis in our backyard. And now we know Jesus. Now we want to talk to Mother Mabley and ask her to pray on my behalf. You didn't call Mother Mabley and ask her how she been the whole year. But now you need prayer warriors, because your prayer ain't hitting the lights. Because God is saying, Mother Mabley, I know, but who the hell are you?
God is saying, who the hell are you? Oh my goodness gracious.
Yeah.
Oh, Shanti says, I thought I was doing something. Pastor Vinny, how do you respond? Because Pastor KL just got the ball rolling. How do you respond to somebody who says, I thought I was doing something?
The proof is in the pudding. What fruits are you exhibiting? If they shall know them by their fruits, by what, as you said, Pastor KL, what are they adding to the service? What are they adding to their life? What are they adding to the Christian community? I mean, how are you going to trust somebody who can't get to church on time? Was praying for you, praying over you, ministering to you, and they can't, get their family together or get their, get themselves. I understand kids are rough sometimes, but how about those that just coming in by themselves, skipping, lollygagging? Oh, I'm here. No. You got, you got to do better than that. You got to show me something. You got to show me what you're about.
Pastor Vinny, they get them kids to school on time.
Yeah, they do.
Because if they don't get those kids to school on time, they have to pay the piper. Years ago, I had somebody who used to come to church late. And I said to them, I said, well, do you go to work late? And they looked at me and said, yes. And I said, and what? So God is happy. God has provided you a job. You don't show him nothing because you don't even get there on time. Mm-hmm. You can't get to church on time. So what are you saying to him overall?
Right.
Oh, and my thing was, I would have been ashamed. I mean, they could have lied, but I would have been ashamed to tell my pastor, well, yeah, I get to work, and it didn't even seem, okay. So had someone asked me that, Pastor Vinny, I would have been like, oh, yeah. It was like, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And, I'm saying to myself, I'm like, well, okay, so are you making a comparison and saying, well, I don't feel as bad because I don't get to work on time? Well, you know what? To me, that's worse because now you're showing an overall lack of gratitude to God for anything he's done for you. Mm-hmm. So you don't care nothing about the job. You don't care nothing about church. So that means you just late to everything. Mm-hmm. That's the chaos. How do you deal with people, who you're an employer, and as a person who, that was my field, you late all the time. You ain't got no job. I'll tell you in a minute, you couldn't work for me. Some of the stuff I see people doing in church, I say, listen, an unstable man is unstable in all his ways. If you're doing that here, so when they said to me that they were late at work, it was kind of a rhetorical question because you're not going to tell me you were late, you were early on the job, but you were that late to church. That means you late to church. So now, what are you saying to God overall, Pastor K.L.?
Well, one of the things I say in my interviews is that when you're on time, you're late. That's my biggest thing. When you're on time, you're late. If I schedule you at 8 o'clock and you walk through my door at 8 o'clock, you're late. So by the time you punch in and get yourself situated, put your coat down and by that time it's 10, 15 minutes already gone. Right. You late from doing your job. You know what I mean? So you have to be there early. And I like to go back to what Pastor Vinny was saying. He was talking about, what fruits, are you showing? I think people get frustrated, with God and with church because I guess they pray for things that it doesn't come in instantaneously. Well, let me help somebody out. When you plant a tree, the fruit is the last thing you see. You have to wait on it.
Yes, sir.
There's a lot of things on that tree that develops before you see fruit. And if you're looking for fruit, you have to first develop. You have to be planted on good ground. You have to be watered, and you have to be cultivated before you see fruit. People think because you put a root in the ground that there's going to be fruit tomorrow. It doesn't happen that way. Meaning, because I got on my knees today and prayed, that the answer is supposed to be tomorrow. It doesn't always happen like that.
Right. Absolutely. And, going back to what you were saying, I used to do payroll and we would be paid every other Wednesday. And my hours, I started later than everyone else. They started at 8:30, I started at 9. So when I would get there, I had to walk to the back of the building to get to where my office was. And there would be a line. So when I said, well, okay, so I don't pay you for this time. You're not being paid for this time. What do you mean? I clocked in. I said, you clocked in, but you leaning up against the wall. Last I checked, that wasn't part of your job description. Mm-hmm. Your job description did not say if something was wrong with your check on Wednesday mornings, you're going to stand up here and wait for me. How long you been standing here? Because you got here at 8:30. I don't get until 9 o'clock. So I'm here, about 8:45? Because like Pastor K.L. said, you can't be on time if you're walking through the door at 9 o'clock. Mm-hmm. So I'm walking here at 8:45. You leaning up against the wall. So that means you've been leaning against the wall for 8:15 since 8:30, 15 minutes. You've been leaning up against the wall. That's how we treat God. Woo! Woo! Whoa. That's how we treat God. We go into prayer and then we go and lean up against the wall. We just wait.
Right.
That's all we do. We just wait. We don't continue to work. We don't continue to serve. We don't continue to worship. We don't continue to pray. You know, it says pray without ceasing. You know, and again, your prayer has to be in gradation. You can't keep asking for God the same thing all over and over again. You know, just that's all they do. They pray and wait. What happens to people that don't know that the trees, yes, it shows the fruit later, but the trees have to be taken care of. God sends water for the trees. It's not left dry. There still has to be something there. When we plant the seeds in the ground, if we want that grass to grow, we have to cultivate the ground. We have to take care of the ground. You know, I used to say all the time, we all had grass. When I first moved here, I had grass. Had grass for about 26 years as I lived here. And I used to watch my neighbors across the street. And or my neighbor down a couple of doors down, and every day they be watering this grass. And all I could think about, all I could think about was the water bill. Listen, pay attention. All I could think about was the water bill. Putting water in this grass every day, I have to pay for that water that goes out there. But when May came and June came, they had beautiful fronts. And all I wanted to do was call a man to come and cut mine. That's how we treat God. We don't want to put nothing into it because all we're thinking about is the cost. What is it costing me? I don't want the beauty that's going to come from cultivating and taking care of this ground. And that's what we're talking about. What you don't put into it, you don't get out of it. So mine would be growing up and have weeds and all of this stuff. And, you know, they would say to me, Steph, if you want, we come over and we'll help you. Because, neighbor, and they were older neighbors. So, they want you to have good looking grass. Pastor Vinny, Pastor K on your own homes. Everybody want their block to look good. So now Stephanie's grass, until I get the man to cut it, it's got weeds and they got flowers, beautiful green grass. And they're like, oh, Steph, we'll help you. And I'm like, no, thank you. I'm gonna get it cut. Because I'm not watering like y'all. I'm not paying that water bill. And that's what we think about. All we think about is what it's cost us. What we're doing. But we don't think about God is expecting us to cultivate that ground. Amen. Because we're going to have to do. Faith without works is dead. Pastor Vinny, I'll pass the baton to you. We got a few more minutes.
Yeah. Good word. Good word, and how do you get good ground? They tell you the sower sows on good ground so that he has a better option, a better probability of getting good fruit. But if you're not doing anything to that ground, your probability decreases.
That's right. That's right.
And probably as much as 50%. Now I live. With the other hue, Brenda get nervous when she lives amongst us people. So we kind of always live closer to the other hue, And some old person had the audacity to say, oh man, y'all need to do something about your grass. I'm like, excuse me? Oh yeah, we take care of our grass here. I said, well, I got a few choice words for you. Mind your business. You need to go mind your business, But as soon as I'm from I call New York the concrete city because we always lived in an apartment. I never had to deal with grass. The only trees I had plants, my mother used to have plants, house plants, all over the place. But a house plant is different from that grass outside there.
Right.
Plummeted by snow and all the other elements. You know, so I had to learn some stuff. And when I started, you know, putting in my little peonies and the plants that last forever, the crotons and all that. Oh, then they would stand and say, "Oh, that's nice. That's what we're talking about." that's what we're talking about. You know, we need to be concerned about adding to the community, adding to the beauty. You know, that's why we have well water. The water that waters our grass comes from a well. It doesn't come from the faucet.
Okay.
It may not smell good, but it sure does a good job on the lawn.
Okay. Pastor KL, that grass, we don't put nothing in it. We ain't getting nothing out of it.
It sounds like Pastor Vinny is using that reusable toilet tissue on that grass.
Not yet, my brother. Not yet. It might be an option. It might be a viable option.
Yeah, but I mean, you guys have both hit it on the head. You have to keep doing what you're doing. You know what I mean? Do not grow weary in well doing. You know, you can reap what you sow if you faint not.
Yeah.
Too many people are fainting right at the brink of the miracle.
Yeah.
You know, they so close to the blessing, but because they've been in the trenches so long, they've just given up. They got the Jones wife syndrome. Why don't you just curse God and die? You've been going through this too long. I don't see no light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
But them that wait upon the Lord, you have to wait. You know what I mean? And a lot of folks don't want to wait on God, but they'll wait on nonsense. You know, he's slapping me around, but he's gonna get better. He gonna get better. You know what I mean? I'm just off rising. I got a degree, but it's gonna get better. You know, it gets better when you put it in God's hands. Take your burdens to the altar and then leave them there. But once you leave them there, you become in a place called waiting. The place called waiting is the place where you have to stay after you ask God. Now you just wait and believe that God's heard you and He's going to come through for you. It shall come to pass. He'll supply all your needs according to your riches and glory, and then He'll give you the desires of your heart. But there is a waiting period. There's a season you have to go through. If you want to wear shorts, wait for the summertime.
Wait, don't turn your mic off yet. Don't turn your mic off yet. What are you doing while you're waiting?
That's the whole issue right there.
What are you doing while you're waiting?
You continue to give God the praise. You continue to worship. You continue to do the work that He's assigned you to do. You have to continue. You can't just stop. Okay, so watch this. If I'm going to New York and I'm driving to New York, but because now I get frustrated and I stop, I never get to New York. I still have the same gas in my car. My car's filled up. But because I'm frustrated on the ride and I just choose to stop, I never get to the destination that's designed for me.
Oh, nice analogy. Nice analogy. And a lot of people don't understand that. That's why I say, I gave the analogy about when I got to work. They get to work, they check their check, check their bank account, and it's $50 short. You got to keep working. I'm sorry. You need next time's paycheck. So in order for you to get next time's paycheck in 2 weeks, because this paycheck today is for 2 weeks behind us. You
Yeah.
working now for the 2 weeks ahead. You ain't gonna get paid because I'm gonna remember you were standing here when I got here, and I'm gonna tell your boss, your supervisor, Mike was standing at my desk for 15 minutes. Where was he? Did you miss him from his workstation? Because you couldn't have seen him for the last 15 minutes because he got here. He was here when I got here. We cannot get to that point where we just stand still. I'ma stand and wait for Steph so she can explain to me what happened to the $50 in my check. What happens to the $50 in your check next pay period? Everything goes on freeze mode? No, you're gonna have to continue to move and do what you need to do so that you can get to the next step. How do we prove to God that we're even worthy of moving to the next step? Right. If we can't even get past the $50 that's missing out the check, and we so stuck that we can't do no work because $50 missing out my check. Pastor Vinny, how do we get to the next level? And how does God give us increase when we can't even take care of the small part that He's given us already?
Amen. That waiting, that's where faith comes in. That's where faith comes in. What did it say? Faith without works is dead. And a lot of us have a lot of dead faith because instead of us continuing to move, we're stuck. It's not exactly how I want it, so I'm stuck. I'm not going any place. I'm gonna wait right here. What's that song? I'm gonna wait right here for my Jesus till He comes. He's my rock, my sword, my shield. He's my wheel in the middle of the wheel. He's my bright morning star. No, we're gonna keep on.
We don't know those. We don't know those.
Stop it. I know you. You know it, right, Pastor? Hell, you ain't that.
He knows it too.
Yeah. But you know, it's the progression. Listen, you're not gonna if there is no gas in your tank, you ain't gonna wait till you run out of gas.
Hopefully,
you when that thing gets closer to E, you're gonna find gas from somewhere.
Right.
And you know, and even when you fill up, you don't go back to the beginning of your destination. You continue on. You continue on. You know, it's a progression. My kids, they have always seen me get up and go to work, and just like they've seen me get up and go to work, they've seen me get up and go to church. It was just one of those flukes. I had a bad flu. I mean, and I was, you know, the chills and all of that stuff. And that Sunday, I was like, sweetheart, I am not gonna be able to make it this morning. And so my younger son said, Daddy, you gonna die? Because they were accustomed to my routine. They were accustomed to my routine. I was getting up. I was going to church. I go to church for the cold, but you know, this was chills and this was, you know, the nausea and all of that stuff. And you know, I said, no, I'm gonna be okay in a couple of hours. You know, but Daddy just got to sit out this morning. But I thought about that. You know, for years now they're grown. They got to take care of their own clock. They got to take care of their own, handle their own business. You know, so they wouldn't know that if they didn't see the example.
Right.
That we set for them. That we set forth.
Absolutely.
So, praise God for that.
Absolutely. You know, there's a lot to this. And, you know, again, you know, once we start talking about one thing, it is so easy to parallel it to other stuff and integrate it because it's all connected. It is all connected. You know, that question that you asked, Pastor Vinny, you know, why do you show up late? pretty much to a 2-hour service. It's only 2 hours. And what have you missed? And what are you trying to gain at the end of the day? If you're showing up to a 2-hour service late, because to a 2-hour service, even 15 minutes late, you didn't miss something.
Yeah.
There ain't a whole lot taking place in no 2 hours. So you're missing something. So what we're giving God matters. My due time crew, thank you so much. Boy, I told you we don't have to do much. All we got to do is need one question. Thank you so much for your contribution into today's conversation, and we pray you have a blessed day. Give Pastor Brenda our love.
I will.
God bless you.
As well.
Thank you.
Not you, said. That's Gail.
Oh, what a conversation. And my prayer is that you get out of that everything you're supposed to get out of that. Waiting, just as we said, just standing still. You still have to move in your wait, but be very careful how you move, because we talked about moving and doing the right thing. How many times have we waited for the Lord and moved out of alignment where God wants us to be? I remember quite a few times God had given me some instruction, and I'm going through the process. I'm gonna be obedient. We'll go through the process. I'm like, okay, God, I'll do it, no problem. And then after a while, it didn't look like what I thought it was supposed to look like. So I'll kind of grow weary. And what you don't realize a lot of times is when you grow weary, you begin to stray. Very subtly, you begin to stray. And after a while, when I didn't see what was going, what I thought God was saying should happen, I'd go back to God and I'm like, God, I don't understand. You said it was supposed to happen this way. It was supposed to happen that way. And I'm still waiting. And, it hasn't happened. And the Lord said, I told you to stand there. You're standing over there and looking for the same results. So I go through the process all over again. I jump back in that spot and I'm like, okay, I'm here, God. And then I'd be all vibrant and active and I'm waiting for the Lord. And as I'm waiting for the Lord, I'm doing things. And after a while, when I didn't see things happening, I'd start losing momentum. I'd start slowing down. I'd start growing weary. Not realizing I was growing weary. And then I'd start straying away from the spot. And after a while, when I realized things weren't the way God said it should be, I go back to God. God, I don't understand. You said it was supposed to be like this. He said, I told you stand over there on that end. No, you over there. And I got tired of God saying that to me. And I started paying attention to where I was at all times. And I started speaking to the Holy Spirit, and I started speaking to God, and I started speaking to Jesus. And I was like, all right, listen, I need you to put me on alert when I start slowing down, when I start growing weary, because clearly I ain't picking up on this thing here. And I need your help. I need your help. And that's exactly what happened. When I started paying a little more attention, and I started listening a little more, because the fact of the matter was, when I thought about it, I had been alerted. Let me tell you something. The Spirit of the Lord is always on its job. Now, you could be sleeping, you could be over there doing something else, you could be unfocused, you do what you want to do, but the Spirit of the Lord is always on his job. And I had to realize that, Stephanie, when this was happening, that was the Spirit of the Lord talking. When this was happening, that was the Spirit of the Lord indicating. So I started paying attention. So when I start growing weary now over anything that God has told me to do, especially over the things that God has told me to do, I immediately go back to God. And I said, all right, I need your strength. Because clearly Stephanie's strength and ran out. I know I've always supposed to have your strength and, some strength of my own, because you're not going to do everything. I got to do some of this work here. But I need more of your strength, because they wear me out for real. And you have to do something cool. And I have to God more often and living off of what he was giving me more. Now, it may sound a little crazy, more often and more. But in other words, when I went back to God, I'm like, okay, I feel it coming. But I'm here. I'm here to get my new fuel. And I liken it to the gas you put in your car. I remember buying a truck. And when I bought the truck, my father got in the car and he said to me, he said, Stephanie, and I tell the story all the time. He says, Stephanie, don't put no regular gas up in this truck. So he said, I'm gonna put, he said, what you been putting in here? I said, regular. He said, I'm gonna fill a tank with premium. He said, but you're gonna have to keep it up. He said, because I'm gonna tell you something, you're gonna notice the difference. So I had another friend who had bought the same truck, and we were talking one day, and he was like, I just put regular in my car. So I was like, okay, well, if he puts regular in his car, I can put regular in my car. So I would put regular in my car, and I noticed after a while, I couldn't understand. I'm like, this is supposed to be a high-end truck. It's supposed to, be moving differently. And I would see sometimes it was sluggish. It was sluggish. And I was like, what is that? And this went on for a while. It went on for about a year. And I just was like, wow, I guess I didn't get a good car. Other people's truck is working better than my truck. I didn't get a good car. So one day, I don't know if it was tax time or whatever, you get a little extra money. And I pulled up to the gas pump, and I said, it was low. It was low. It was really low. And I said, I'm going to put premium in here. And I put the premium in there. And I was on my way somewhere, and I had to get on the highway or whatever. And about 20 minutes into the drive, all of a sudden, the car just went, phew, just took off. And I picked it up, I noticed it. And then for the rest of the ride, it was like that. And then on the ride home, it was like that. And I heard my father say, Stephanie, don't put no regular gas in this car. Don't put no regular gas in this truck, because you're going to have to put premium in here. And I immediately called him. And I said, remember you told me? And he laughed. And the other day, now this was back in 2007. The other day we were together, and I reminded him of that conversation. And I said, I'll never forget that. It's not the only thing he said to me, but that was the most profound thing for me that he had said, and in my adult years. And I liken that to what I just got finished saying. If you are functioning on unleaded gas, that gas ain't gonna work for you, because God, it has now converted you from that beat up car into that high-end truck. And he's giving you a level of increase. Now, you're not gonna be able to function on what you used to do in this new life. Because with more responsibility, you're going to need that boost. You're going to need that high-end fuel to get you through. You're going to need that high-end fuel so you can take off. Because, baby, let me tell you something. You driving that high-end truck using that regular unleaded, you're going to always feel sluggish. Ooh. You're going to always feel like you're not moving. And that's the way I used to feel with the truck. I'm like, I put my foot on the gas and it would go, and then and that's the way I felt. That's that's what I was feeling in life. I was like, God, I'm getting weary here. And after a while I go, I'll push a little bit. And then after a while I'll slow down. And I got tired of that. And I was like, that's not the way it's supposed to be, Stephanie. And the Spirit of the Lord was in my ears like, that's not supposed to be, Stephanie. You are not who you used to be. You cannot function the way you need to function. You're going to have to keep going back to God and refueling. And that's what I mean when I say go back to God and get more and more and more, and go back to God and get from him more often, because you're going to need that in order to remain that premium truck. Because after a while, you're going to be that premium truck, but functioning as that beat up truck and car that you used to be. It's not the same. God needs more from you. And the more he needs from you, the more you're going to need from him. Make sure you find yourself at his feet, getting that premium, unleaded fuel. It ain't going to work no other way. Trust me when I tell you. You've been watching It's Due Time with Pastor Steph. Join us Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. where we discuss matters of the heart, mind, and spirit. As you go through your day, be sure to set your mind on things that are above, not on things that are on the earth. They will only serve as a distraction. Remember, prayer changes things. It's Pastor Steph signing off, and I want to thank my Due Time crew for always coming through big time. Thank you for hanging out with us and keeping that chat room alive. Please do not miss this opportunity to take Jesus as your personal Savior right now. If you've already done that, then please make sure you stay in close contact with God. Take that journey with God and increase that relationship with him, because later is not promised to anyone. Until tomorrow, God spares, where it's Wow Wednesday. Until then, I love you.